Hi guys, welcome back to the garden. If you're new here, my name is Austin and I'm a young makeup artist just doing my best. But today we're actually not going to be doing any makeup. As you can see, I have my mug done. We're going to be talking literature, specifically this fine piece of literature right here. Am I doing a shameless self-plug on my channel? Absolutely. Do I feel bad about it? Not even a little bit, because let me tell you what, this thing. Okay, so I just recently discovered that I have about 50 of them left, 50 of the physical copies of these. And so I decided, you know what, let's run a big sale, let's do it, let's get it out there, and let's push some books. Well, in case you guys have not heard about it in one of my other videos, Renaissance is the very first book I ever published. I published it my junior year, the end of my junior year through Kindle Direct Publishing. It was kind of my first leap into the whole publishing world, the whole literature world in general. Like, I'd always written before, but I'd never done anything on this scale. Like needing, cover, I think I had a friend of mine do the photography work for this cover. I had another friend model. We spent all of Memorial Day running around to different areas with flowers, like just trying to get the best photo. And I think it turned out pretty well. Learning how to design cover art. This is the original copy, but I do have an updated copy on Amazon with this cover. So yeah, I decided we're gonna just kind of like talk about Renaissance a little bit, talk about the history behind it, how it came to be, which is kind of a fun story that not a lot of people know. And then we're gonna do a reading of the first chapter. So let's get into it. All right, we're all comfy cozy, I'm sitting here, you guys can't see, but I'm sitting here on bed, in my little shorts and whatnot, and yeah, let's talk Renaissance. So it's kind of a funny story. Actually, it's kind of a short story. I used to go to this thing called writing group back in high school, and my freshman year, I actually started this project. And the whole story kind of came from me and my friend Becca during writing group decided to go down the hallway and get something from the vending machine. And that's it. That was the story. I was like, I wonder if I can do something with this. And the original concept was like, robots and stuff. The original concept was like, robots and stuff. But, speaking of, but it I don't know a lot about technology, and I don't think it translated as well. So I kind of changed it, and eventually it became this dark witch, and then this mystical world full of, witches of the north, the east, the south. I was super into the cardinal signs and how they kind of correlated with different magical abilities. That was super cool to me. So it was the Witch of the West, although not that Witch of the West is what I always tell people. So yeah, I will read the back for you, and we can kind of start getting into it. Here begins the story of Ari and Becca, who have spent their lives in a colorless circle of waking up on the dirty streets and in crowded foster homes. Ari spends his nights on a retired mattress. Becca spends her nights staring up at the stars. Then, suddenly, they arrive in Circe, a magical world of color and liveliness. Created by the goddess Passem, the children notice the difference between the blandness of their world and the vividness of this one. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. The reason they're there is to defeat the evil that's brewing in the west, the witch-turned-demoness Melis, who has taken the successor to the Circean throne, Princess Alina. It's Ari and Becca's duty to travel the land of Circe, to learn the magic of the north, east, south, and west so that they have the power to defeat Melis. In a world where angels, witches, and prophecies exist, and where danger lurks beyond every corner, this war is far from simple. Battles between temptation and moral rectitude are in full swing. The only question is, who will the darkness consume before it's been vanquished? So that's kind of a whole theme that I went into with this, is the idea of temptation and being corrupted. Because if you think about it, it's anyone I guess any one of us are fully capable of succumbing to temptation. So it's that human instinct and human urge to screw up and do the wrong thing. But it's also a story of rebirth and renewal, hence the title Renaissance, which means rebirth. and how you can kind of come out of that and still do good in the end. So yeah. All right. I think we're gonna get started. Renaissance. To Becca, whom without this piece would not exist. Thank you for showing me how to be something better. Thank you for showing me how to appreciate the colors. Chapter 1, The Heartbeat. Colors. Something about them seemed to encapsulate those who were simply willing to look. Ari and Becca were amongst those select few. They spent their nights dreaming of a world full of colors. Although they had never met in the reality of their lives, their dreams correlated in the world of colors. In Becca's small home, this world seemed like an adventure, a way to escape her colorless life. To Ari, who had always known boxes and trashed mattresses, this world represented an opportunity to be something better. Their adventurous spirits writhed within them. Every chance a journey arose, they seized it. They hoped the world of colors wasn't too far from their colorlessness. That night came when Becca glanced through her window and Ari stared above himself and his mattress to where the moon and stars glowed even brighter. A voice called out to them. She whispered, "When the star of the north shines brightest, meet me upon the bridge." Soon the solstice of winter came around. When the star of the north glittered in the void of the night sky, the duo knew what they needed to do. Ari stood from his stiff bed, brushed off whatever dust he could escape from, and strolled down a path to the only bridge in town. Becca looked into the sky from the window of her home. She took notice of the shimmering star. In an instant, she opened the window and slipped into the night. She followed the light until she had reached the very center of the bridge. She looked forward and faced Ari. At that moment, there were simply two people upon a set of wooden planks. She took brief notice of his relatively dirty appearance. His hair was bleach blonde, though it was a mystery to her how he had come about the money to pay for the dye. His darker blonde roots were showing only slightly. His hair was tousled to appear messy, but as if he'd meant for it to look that way. That's how his entire appearance seemed to be. His features were both soft and extremely sharp. His skin was fair, yet it was pulled rather tightly across the bones of his cheeks and jawline. He was able to be beautiful without even trying, although he did look as if he hadn't eaten for days. There was something familiar about him. Ari watched as the girl's eyes raked across his skin, taking in every feature, every flaw, but he couldn't speak against it. With nobody else on the bridge, he couldn't help but take in her light brown hair and pale skin. She seemed like a warm and loving person just based on appearances alone. He could tell that her smile would be lovely. There was something familiar about her. "What's your name?" the girl inquired. "I'm Ari. What about you?" "Becca. It's nice to meet you, Ari." "And you as well, Becca. Do you know who that voice belonged to? Did she talk to you too?" "Yeah, I guess we should just wait until something happens." They waited. The chilling winter air cut through their forms. They shivered. Ari looked up to the full moon that watched over them. When he was first stuck on the streets, it was the moon that watched over him to help him fall asleep. That may be why he felt such a connection to the glowing orb in the dark sky. It was a promise to him, something he could rely on. Even when nobody else would, the moon would show up. When it reached its peak in the sky and the northern star glowed even brighter, the couple on the bridge were taken from their trances by a voice behind them. "Hello, Ari and Becca." They turned to find a woman with elegant violet tresses. Her eyes were a lovely blue, like the skies of this town when all the clouds had been chased away. A pair of blue wings wrapped themselves around the waist of her silver dress. The children, startled, began to back away from the woman, but she held out a hand in an attempt to comfort them into staying. It didn't work, so instead she spoke in a calming tone. "You must be questioning all that's happening right now. Please, allow me to explain." The children halted, curious. "My name is Nadia, and I am from a land called Circe, the colorful land you've explored in your dreams. That dream world is real, and I'm here to ask for your help in saving it. A long time ago, an evil was born within our walls. You see, Circe is controlled by 4 witches. I control the north, while for years the east, south, and west have been under control of 3 others. That was until one of them turned dark. Her name is Malis, and she used to be the witch of the west, and no, not the one from Oz." Nadia grinned. "She created a new kind of creature, the demons. They were beings formed from darkness. She then changed herself irrevocably in order to control them. We haven't a clue how she's managed to do it, but our demonic warriors cut through much of our defenses. They're plotting to overrun the Chateau of Wings, the resting place of the angels. Wait, please. Ari held up his hand. This is a lot to take in. An evil witch has created a bunch of demons, and she's planning to fight some angels with them. Okay, I suppose I can maybe wrap my mind around that. But why would she do that? What's so special about the Chateau of Wings? She's trying to acquire the chalice. It's a cup filled with the tears of our creator, Passem. The goddess formed our world a long time ago, and then wept tears of joy, which she gathered and put into a chalice that contained the power of the gods. It was kept as a ward against evil. A creature made of darkness cannot touch it, but Melis is a witch, so technically she can. The angels watch over it at the Chateau of Wings, so she can't get to it. But she's much stronger now. We need your help to prevent Melis from getting the chalice. If she gets it, then she can use it to become a god herself and doom us all. Why us? Becca asked. You two are very special. You may not realize it now, but soon enough you will decipher all. You have unimaginable power lying dormant in your bodies. Just give it a chance to surface. Are there any questions? Why did Melis turn dark in the first place? When Passam was finished creating the world and all in it, she left her only daughter, Alina, in charge. Alina was the first of the angels, and the princess of a new race. But Alina wasn't able to wear the crown until she came of age. Until then, Melis and her sister were in charge of preparing Alina for the queendom. Melis was set as acting queen, and once Alina eventually came of age, the witch didn't wish to give up the throne. The feud erupted into a war, and Alina grew an army of angels that fought against Melis. Melis escaped to the west, her former home. Alina's army fought surprisingly well against her. This was before her experimentation with demonic forces, mind you. Finally, Melis was banished to a place where only the darkest individuals are taken, Hecate. It's a place akin to Circe, but dark as night. Melis was placed at the very center of it, so the pressure would keep her wounded, but instead she found strength. Sadly, she found a way to escape and return to Circe. Then she discovered a way to create demons, and the war was revived. When Melis found out about the chalice, which was a secret that only Alina and the angels knew of, and which would grant her a godlike status, she wanted the chalice even more than she wanted to be queen. She managed to kidnap the princess to torture her for information, and Alina hasn't been heard from since. We believe that she's being held in the west, but that land is nearly untouchable due to Melis's forces. Because of the princess's absence, the other witches and I have tried to hold the nation together, but Melis has been growing her forces. Many small attacks have weakened us, and we know that she'll plan a large one soon. Ari and Becca, please help us. Will you help save Circe? I'm in, Ari replied instantaneously. Becca glanced over, incredulous in the face of his immediate response. He took notice of her questioning expression. There are people who need help. I'll do whatever I can. Are you coming with? Becca thought back to her family that was resting to begin a day anew. School and work, that's all this life would entail. There would be no adventure, no exploration. This world was an endless era of blandness, and it left a bitter taste in Becca's mouth. I'm in as well. Nadia smiled. Lovely, come with me. She walked to the center of the bridge with the two adults. She held her hands out to them. They each took one and joined their remaining hands. A circle was created. Icy chills crept from Nadia's dark-skinned fingers and up the younger people's arms. The moon glowed ever so brightly above them. The stars seemed to sparkle even louder than before. The world began to spin around them. Don't let go, Nadia warned. They held on despite the intense force. Around and around their bodies were thrown, but they remained in a tight ring. Soon enough, the spinning ended and they landed upon a soft white substance. Ari scooped up a handful of the chili powder and threw it into the air. Snow, he remarked. Nadia stood and brushed herself off, tucking a strand of lavender hair behind her ear. Welcome to the north, children. They stood upon what they now understood to be a terrace overlooking the vast snow-covered desert of the north. Becca held up her hand to the falling flakes, but instead of melting upon contact, they danced on her fingers. She felt an instant sense of power here. Ari could feel it too, like a new kind of blood that pumped through his veins. Nadia led them into the tall, icy structure that was her home. Busily, people in white and blue buzzed about the halls. It reminded Becca of the time she'd spent in the city, people obsessed with their own affairs. She supposed that all people in all worlds must be like this. She let out a breath, watching the pale fog roll from her mouth. Ari crossed his arms. He found himself wishing that he had more to wear than his skimpy t-shirt. The witch led them to a room. The only thing in the room was a bowl of water, unfrozen despite the temperature surrounding it. The blue-eyed woman turned to face her audience. Today, I will help you learn the magic of the North. I realize that it's a bit soon to be testing your magical ability, but I've heard word that Melis's forces are on the move, and time is a luxury we do not have. The witch turned to face the girl. Becca, you will go first. Imagine your power flowing through the world around you. It's an energy, much like wind or water. Use it to move the water, and then freeze it. Becca stepped up to the bowl and placed her hand over it. She did exactly what Nadia told her and imagined her power as an energy that ebbed and flowed about the room. She could clearly picture it all in her mind. A strong blue energy moved in waves about her mind. She used it to pick up the water, and a wind bent around it, which caused a small, watery twister to appear before her. She then forced the particles to slow down drastically, freezing the miniature tornado. Amazed at what she'd done, she accidentally dropped her creation. Sorry. It's all right, Becca. You've done far better than I had originally anticipated you'd do. Not many of my students are able to manipulate an element as well on their first try. Kudos to you. The witch smiled and clapped. Well, as a great manipulator of ice once said, the cold never bothered me anyway. Becca grinned while Ari slapped his forehead in shame. Nadia seemed unaffected by the reference. Nadia then moved the shards of ice back into the bowl, and with a flick of her wrist, they melted to form water once more. She tentatively looked over to the boy with bleached hair. She could feel the power cascade from his skin. Your turn, Ari. Freeze the ice. Create a gust. You've seen how Becca had done it. Now you do it as well. Ari stepped up to the bowl. At first, he put his hands above the water and tried imagining the energy, but nothing came to mind. He tried again and again, but nothing was happening. He was getting frustrated and angry with himself. In his mind, he had but one chance to prove he was as good as this girl. He thought back to his years of being alone, and it seemed to take over his body. Instead of imagining his magic as an energy, he invoked the power of his emotions. He began to get angry at other things. He was angry at his mother for leaving him alone, at the fact that he had to scrounge in the alleys just for a scrap of dinner, at the constant depression that kept him from creating healthy relationships. He was truly miserable. Winds whipped around him dangerously, and the bowl of water was thrown into the opposing wall. His eyes glowed blue, like the ocean drowned out the forests and then charged with electricity. The bowl shattered against the wall, and the water spilled onto the floor. Ari then caused it to freeze and grow. Jagged shards stuck out like thorns and then multiplied as Ari held out his hands to them. He didn't understand why this pain was being revealed now. Maybe it was because for once in his life he felt power and he had ability to turn his pain into something else. After some time had passed and he'd almost cocooned himself in his creation, all he could register was the frigid temperatures and Nadia's unwavering hold on him. The witch stopped the storm by grasping onto his hands and holding him against her. The winds died down and the ice stopped growing. The boy then stood, hands shaky, and was able to pull away from her. Are you okay, Ari? The question had so many layers. He didn't feel like answering them, so he remained silent. It has been quite a night. You both must be exhausted. I'll have my assistants, Mistral and Gale, lead you to your rooms. Girls! 2 women emerged from a wind that came through the door. They both had pale, almost fragile faces. The whitest of hair fell in waves from their heads. Ice crowned their heads and wings, decorated their shoulder blades, white like the rest of their ensemble. They were porcelain dolls given life. They seemed as if they would break if they were touched. The 2 joined hands as sisters and led Becca and Ari down the corridor. Come, one of them said. They looked back and smiled with teeth that sparkled like freshly fallen snow. Ari and Becca noticed that the only difference between the sisters were their eyes. Mistral had eyes the color of Nadia's hair, while Gail's were much more similar to Nadia's own eyes. Gail cracked a door on the left, while Mistral opened the door to Ari's room on the right. "Enjoy your stay," they announced in unison. They grasped hands and disappeared in another flurry of wind. Ari and Becca looked at each other in disbelief. "You want to talk about what happened?" Becca began. "No, not really. I don't even know myself," Ari finished. He looked into her brown eyes. "Good night, Becca. I'm glad that you came with me." "Good night, Ari." The boy turned and closed his door. His hand ran through the blonde follicles on his head before he glanced around the pristine white room. The ceilings held icicles that hung like stalactites. His bed was near the door, with beautiful white curtains falling down over a wooden frame. The bed itself was made of a plushy white material. Finally, he walked over and collapsed onto the bed. "Bury it down, bury it deep. Forget about your feelings, and we can go to sleep." He whispered to himself his nightly mantra. His eyelids then grew heavy with the fatigue of the night's work, and sleep advanced upon him. He dreamed of his mother, of the life he could have had with her had the accident not occurred. She had passed away when he was so young. If she hadn't, maybe his life would have taken a different turn. The image of a life long lost passed in a blur until all that was left was an empty space. "This is what would have happened, huh?" A voice echoed through the dream world. Within the dark space, a woman appeared. Black waves of hair cascaded from her head. Everything about her radiated blackness. The only thing about her that was colorful were the wings that protruded from her back. They started white near the shoulder blade and changed from green to yellow to orange and then finally to red. The full spectrum of autumn lay upon her shoulders. This was Malis. When the witch landed on the surface of his mind, she folded her appendages around herself. Her eyes reflected shades of autumnal colors, all flurried like falling leaves. "I'm here to tell you something, Ari. That car accident was meant to be. Your life is supposed to be miserable. That accident that stole your mother's life, it wasn't an act of fate." She laughed. "Hell, it wasn't even an accident." She grinned and crimson blood dripped over the fall in her eyes. "I did it," Malis announced gleefully. "I killed her. You see, the problem with your mother was that she didn't know when to give up. She was a fighter. She wouldn't let me have Cersei as I wanted. Your mother would have made a valuable partner, but instead of infinite power, she chose you, her little Ari. She really loved you. I honestly don't see the charm in what she was trying to protect. Not that she protected you much anyway. She still left you to fend for yourself." The woman taunted and bit her lower lip. The smile on her face was still there. The reminiscence of the murder was clearly fresh on her mind. All of a sudden, it was like Ari stood yards away from Malis. He seemed to be inside his own mind, looking into the eyes of his mother's killer. "So you're the witch that everyone's been telling me about?" Ari asked, unimpressed. "Not much of a witch anymore, dear. I was technically banished from the circle, but now I'm a soon-to-be goddess. Alina is no longer a problem, and I have nothing standing in my way of the chalice, except for you, that girl, and an army of already wounded angels. How does it feel to know that already people are choosing Becca over you? I suppose it won't matter. You two won't be a problem for much longer. Have fun in your last few days, You won't stand a chance," Ari exclaimed, and he felt the anger rise from the core of his being. He thrust his hands out, and a storm blasted toward the colorful demoness. Malis giggled and dissipated in a burst of darkness before the brewing storm could even nick her. Ari awoke, breath heavy. A sheen of sweat coated his body. The approaching daylight made him shimmer. Looking around, he saw that the furniture had been blown in all directions. The door crashed open, which caused a chair to be thrown from the blockade. Nadia rushed in. "Ari, get up! Malis's army is here." Ari brushed the hair from his face and leapt to his feet. Becca came past the threshold into his room and threw him a fresh white outfit. "Why are you throwing me clothes? We're being invaded." Ari questioned his companion. There is no excuse for a lack of hygiene, Becca yelled back at him, and turned away to allow him to change. Nadia, meanwhile, was at the window, hands out in front of her concentration purely on her magic. Her eyes once again flashed a brilliant blue, one that sent shivers down the spines of those standing close to her. Ari and Becca, fully prepared, looked out the window at the destruction on its way. An army approached the mountain range that Nadia called home, the only barrier that existed between the people living in the north and annihilation. The wind that Nadia held steady kept the demonic army from advancing, which, from where they stood, looked simply like black dots. Her warriors in white leaped great lengths with their magic, propelled forward by Nadia's winds. They fought one enemy and traversed to the next when finished, but the demons were resilient. It took 3 soldiers to defeat 1 demon. The northern army wasn't able to gain any ground against their foes, but they seemed to be holding their own well. This wouldn't be the case for much longer. Come, it's time to put your skills on display. We will show Malis and her army just what we in the north are truly made of. Ice? Becca giggled lightly. Right, not a time for jokes. Try to follow me into the battlefield. Use the winds to guide you. With that, she leapt from the window and glided on her azure feathers. She became a blue speck in the air until she landed on the snow and threw her hands out, causing a blizzard to cripple the demons before her. The children watched their tutor fight from their place above the battlefield. Becca grasped Ari's hand. To be honest, I'm kind of scared. We're gonna be fine. We will defeat them. Everyone knows that in the end the good guys always win and everything ends happily, Ari stated. Deep down, he was scared too. That's why he held on. They continued to hold on to each other for a second longer before they jumped onto the ledge and out from the window like Nadia had done. The ground approached rather quickly. They called out to the winds, but all they received was an unenthusiastic push away from the mountain. They called out again. Nothing. Maybe we should have practiced this part, Becca yelled out. Before impact was inevitable, they managed to call out to the winds and convince them to carry the duo across the white landscape. They surged upon the air current, and just a brief moment later they landed next to Nadia. The witch attacked with as much force as she could muster. Her winds blew the creatures back, and she was able to freeze the others that slipped through. Her blue wings had a layer of ice crusted over them. Why is there ice on your wings? This is why. The witch sliced through the air, crashing into a group of demons and swiftly cutting through the series of black masses. Oh, you're turning yourself into a human blender. Demon smoothies. I doubt that's nutritious, Ari commented. Then the 2 from Earth saw their first demon up close. Before, they were just dark masses, but one had gotten close enough to them that they were finally able to see what they really were. The monstrosities were terrifying. They manifested from the shadows and were able to move more quickly than any animal seen back in the other world. In addition, the demons could take any form they'd like, attacking as canines, bovines, felines, or even humanoid figures. They rather quickly began to cut down the northern forces. They tore out flesh, ripped out organs, beat their fists onto soldiers until they heard bones snap. Their mouths gnashed, feeding upon the corpses like feral hogs. The battlefield was filled with the sound of dead bodies being eaten. One of the shadowy figures approached Ari. Its jaw hung open, letting strings of black drool leak from its open mouth. It had needle-like teeth, and Ari didn't appreciate the hungry look in its eyes. Silently stepping, the demon inched forwards, its arms dragged against the ground. Its long, black talons scraped against the hard ice. Ari took a second to lick himself. Damn it, I'm delicious, he thought to himself. The boy was terrified. When the monster lunged toward him, his instincts took over. He rolled to the side, dodging the demon's first move. Then he threw his hands out, but nothing happened. The demon lunged again, and Ari rolled to the side, his shoulder digging into the ground to give him momentum to pop back up again. Then he threw his arms out again to violently disembody the demon with razor-like wings. The demon's dark arm twitched with the final vitality on the wet, blackened snow. Something in Ari's mind spoke to him. It told him how he was supposed to move and bend the air to cause the creatures around him to perish. As time progressed and more monsters approached him, Ari moved the sharp wind in flurries, adding to the piles of disembodied limbs. Becca, like Nadia, chose to freeze the monsters, turning whatever internal liquids they had into ice. Demon popsicles. Slowly, the battle began to favor the north. The army wasn't losing many soldiers, and the demon clan was beginning to run out of demons to spew. Then, the monsters began to shake their heads, making a deafening clicking noise. It was like their jaws were snapping in and out of place. It was a battle cry. They then parted, and a small opening appeared in the horde of beasts. They allowed a figure to pass through their ranks. A man in heavy black armor clung against the ground in his metal boots until he was able to look down on Ari and Becca and watch as they recalled their winds and ice. The children could see that he wasn't a demon, but he certainly wasn't friendly either. A coal-colored patch covered one of his eyes. The other was a deep blue, like the waters of the river Lethe, deep in the land of the dead. On his head was a skull helmet with two horns coming from either side. A blue-tinted ring pierced his septum. He sneered and pulled a wide sword from his back. The blade was black and the hilt was fashioned from bone, like his helmet. He waved it around with ease before pointing the tip against Becca's heart. He paused. Becca felt the power within her grasp. She could see the blue energy around her like strings that begged to be woven into matter. She knew that if she started to fight, she would be expected to finish, with or without the help from Ari beside her. She knew that it was solely his emotions that allowed his magic to be so intense, and she wasn't sure if he would be able to conjure up his energy to assist her. He'd been able to help thus far, but that was when his life was in imminent danger. Now it was her life on the line. Becca also knew that there was no real choice for her. The alternative to a battle was death by the large swords at her heart. A chill rippled through her bones. The man in front of her shivered and glanced down at the sword in his grasp. There was frost creeping along the metallic gleam, aimed toward the hilt. Before he was able to react, Becca threw her hands forward and a burst of air knocked the man into the snow behind him. She saw the energy around her. It was blue like the sky. She attempted to condense those strings of energy into a ball of blue magic, but the man rebounded quickly. He rapidly charged towards Becca. Ari felt a sudden need to protect his companion, so he created and then threw sharp shards of ice that lodged in the barbarian's armor. It was a rapid volley, enough to slow the man down and keep Becca safe. The man grinned maliciously while he pulled a shard out of his armor and crushed it in his fists. It fell to the northern ground like broken glass. The man's eyes showed nothing but coldness. The sword in his hand began to glow with an unnatural chilliness. The air that clung to the sparsely occupied field dropped to an even lower temperature. Then he swung the hunk of metal at Ari. It flew through the air at the boy. Ari leaped to the side just before the sword made contact, which caused it to smash into the ground, sending pieces of ice into the air. The man hurried to pull it from the earth and face his opponents. Ari ran to stand next to Becca. The Witch of the North strode up to join them, and then glowered at the warrior. Becca and Ari had never witnessed a look colder than the one that she wore. Kai, the violet-haired woman addressed. Nadia, the man in armor replied. It is wonderful to see you again, my dear. The witch's throat visibly tightened at his term of endearment. I wish I could say the same. Where have you been, Kai? I've been waiting since you left to aid in the first war. I've always been right here waiting. What the hell are you doing with those monsters? What I was meant to do. I am now who I was always meant to become, Nadia. That witch, Malus, offered me something you never could. She offered me power. Now just my name causes those before me to tremble in terror, something I could have never had with you. If I had stayed, I could have never had this unlimited power. You could have had something even better. You could have had love, Kai. Love in and of itself is more powerful than anything else in Cersei. In the universe, your power was with me. It was always with me. I loved you, and you left me alone. And what really hurts is why you think you had to do it. Kai gave her a look, one of secrecy. Don't think I don't know why you did it. People asked for me. They wanted me to lead. You think I didn't know how much you resented that I became a witch? You never could stand being placed as second most powerful. I was in charge of the North, and you didn't want that. I didn't ask for any of this. All I wanted was to continue as if Passem had never asked at all. The life I could have given you wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. No, you weren't. His features expressed no feelings. He was dead inside. Now I suppose that we will truly see who has more power, Nadia. His eyes softened, just for a moment, and that millisecond of softness that she caught a glimpse of caused Nadia to look upon her former love with an intense pain in her eyes. I'm not going to hurt you, she said to him with sorrow. I made a promise to you, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, in richer and in poorer, I can't hurt you. Her voice crescendoed in her new companion's eyes. Ari, Becca, go to the other witches. Carry on my memory by stopping Malus, and never forget what I have taught you and what I teach to you now. Love, past, present, and future, is the truest and strongest magic. I loved you too, believe me. I've watched out for you for longer than you know. I just wish that we had more time so I could know you for real. Make me proud, children. Are you ready, Northerners? Watch as I become the one to finish off the great Nadia, Witch of the North. He then turned to face her. Then I will control the North and take everything you hold dear. Kai looked through the witch's tears and pain. He didn't care. He truly felt nothing. He, much like the rest of his demonic audience, was void of emotion. Nadia turned, only to blow a gentle kiss to the teenagers as they felt themselves being taken into the sky. Ari glanced behind him, surprised to see Gale and Mistral carrying he and Becca away from the battle. He looked down onto the frozen tundra to see what would come to pass. Kai raised his sword and looked one final time at the woman he used to love. The witch's knees were on the ground that she had poured so much of her life and soul into. Nadia's heart swelled with the emotion in her soul. I still love you, Nadia whispered. Her voice echoed into the sky, for better or for worse. Kai's sword sliced through the sky and pressed against the witch's heart. One last cry was heard before a burst of cold blew against everything on the battlefield. The chilling air crested over all that surrounded the witch. It caused ice to grow around every crevice of every creature. The demonic army was destroyed, their blackened forms mid-lunge. The northern armies were killed as well, a collateral of war. A glaze of ice covered their bodies. Kai knelt at Nadia's self-created casket of ice. He pulled the armor from his body. His darkness had left him. Emotion surged through his core that he had never felt before, for Nadia's love had melted his heart. Her death pierced his heart. All of the years that he'd been numb to feelings caused an immediate burst of them to rocket through every vein and nerve. He pressed his hand to the one in the icy casket. His body slowly froze over with hers, until death do us part. Becca cried into the arms of Gale. Sobs were let out to honor the friend that was given to them and taken away so swiftly. Ari's eyes leaked tears for the maternal figure that bestowed upon them so much love and adoration. They both wanted to keep the promise they'd made to her. They would make Nadia proud. Even in the quiet of the aftermath, they still heard the faint twinkle of Nadia's laugh and the rhythm of a drum. Whew. All right, so that was chapter 1. There are 6 more chapters. They're, longer parts. I don't really describe them as chapters. They're just longer parts. But yes, so this is Renaissance. Like I said, I'm running a special right now. I have, I believe, only 50 copies left of the physical copy that are not on Amazon. This is the original first edition published version, and I'm going to be running them for a discounted price. So normally they're, I believe, about like $12, $13 on Amazon. I'm running these ones just for $10 each, and they also come signed, personally addressed to whoever buys them. So yeah, that's super exciting. So if you guys are interested in any of that, you know, shoot me a message. I have all of my socials down in the link or down in the description. And yeah, this is definitely one of those books that like it's I feel like a very Gen Z version of a fantasy book. Like you could tell in there with all of like the little references, the jokes, because that's very much like Gen Z's vibe is like about to die and they're like, come on, put a shirt on. Let's be real. This is like hygiene is nothing to joke about. So yeah. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys are interested in more content like this, maybe more readings, you can go through the whole book if you'd like to. But if you're interested in more readings, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and yeah, go buy the book. I'll put the link in the description below. It's on Amazon, Renaissance by Knapp. And then, yeah, thank you guys so much.